In this lesson, we're going to focus on matching questions for the listening paper. Let's take a close look at these. All right, so matching questions look like this. We have a basic question up towards the top there. You see it says, will Julia participate in the following activities during her vacation to Hawaii? And then we get a list of choices. Sometimes these choices are in a box, sometimes just a list like this one. And our choices are A, she will do this activity, B, she might do this activity, or C, she will not do this activity. Okay, so we know that Julia is going to be doing some activities. We have to see about whether she's going to do some particular ones or not. And those activities are the numbered choices below. So number 1, 2, and 3. These are our questions. Okay, so number 1 is snorkeling. And we need to choose the correct answer choice, A, B, or C, for number 1, number 2, and number 3, based on what is discussed in the passage. Okay, so that's what these matching questions look like. You'll have a list of items and you have to match the correct item, the correct letter choice, A, B, or C, or more choices are possible as well, with the numbers and whatever information is supplied by the numbers. Okay, so that's what these questions look like. We'll analyze this set of questions in a little bit after we discuss how to approach this question type. Okay, first let's look at some basic information about this question type. All right, so as we just saw, the main point of this question, the main activity you'll be doing, is to match a numbered list of items, okay, these are your questions, with answer choices, which will appear in a list, sometimes in a box for you. So this question type is used to test detailed comprehension. So you're supposed to listen for details to answer this question type. As you're in the time you have before you listen, as you're analyzing this question type, there are a couple things to keep in mind. First, you need to understand the question. Okay, so you will listen for specific piece of information for this question type. In our example that we saw at the beginning of this lesson, we were given the question, okay, what activities will Julia do? Okay, and then we give the list. She will do this, she might do this, she will not do that. It's important to understand exactly what you're supposed to listen for from this part of the question. Then secondly, you look at the numbered prompts, okay? These will give a list of items, and it's these things that will be answered in order in the passage, okay? So from numbers 1 to whatever you're answering, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, whatever it is, the answers for each of those will come in order, will be spoken or provided by the speakers in order, in that order in the passage. Okay, we see this in other listening question types as well, where the answer for question 3, for example, will be provided by the speakers before you can expect to get the answer for question number 4 in a set of questions. Okay, so it's that list, the numbered list, that will provide this order for matching questions. All right, now let's analyze our sample set of questions here a little bit to think about how to approach it, how you might approach a question set like this as you're analyzing and predicting before you listen to the speakers. First of all, we talked about understanding the question. Okay, so in this case, it's important to know the key words, the things you're supposed to listen for. In this question set, I underlined, will Julia participate? And I underlined activities. And also Hawaii, okay? We're supposed to listen for these activities and whether Julia will participate in them or not. There are some questions you should ask. Remember, this is we're looking at this question set before we've listened to the speakers talking, so there's some things we don't know. Possibly there are going to be other people discussed, other people besides Julia. Maybe there's a person named Eric or Steve or somebody else, and he will participate in different activities than Julia does. So we need to keep in mind that we're only listening for Julia's activities in this question set. Okay. Also, do we know that Hawaii is the only vacation we're going to be hearing about? Maybe there are going to be other vacations discussed, and we need to keep that information straight as well. So that's why I underlined, will Julia participate, activities in Hawaii? Because we need to keep straight that this is the specific information we're supposed to listen for. Okay, then of course, it's important to just keep in mind the three options in the question. She definitely will, she might, and she will not. So we can expect to hear some answers about this, these different activities in the passage. All right, so that's what you would do for the first step to sort of understand the question. Secondly, then, we need to just take a look at the options, the choices we have by the numbers for our matching questions. We're going to hear about snorkeling, horseback riding, eating at a famous restaurant. Now, they may talk about these topics in a variety of different ways. Maybe they go back and forth among these topics and activities that they're discussing, but the answer choices are going to come in order. So we will get a definite answer about yes, maybe, or no to snorkeling before we get a definite answer about yes, no, or maybe to the horse riding activity. Just keep that in mind, that these activities are ordered in this way because we can expect a definite answer of yes, maybe, or no to each of these, one before the other, by the speakers who are speaking in the passage. Now, as we have seen in other question types, for example, multiple choice in particular, just keep an open mind always. The speakers can change their minds, okay? The answers will come in order, but they can go back and forth between them. Let's say that they're talking about horse riding, and the speaker may seem like she's definitely going to do this, but then she might change her mind after a few sentences later. Okay, just keep that in mind, that speakers often do change their minds or change course in IELTS listening passages. Let's do a practice question now. Okay, so here we've got a set of matching questions. Let's take a look at this, and then in a moment, I'm going to play the recording so you can try to answer it for yourself. Okay, so we have in the question, according to the woman, okay, why are the following comic books important? All right, so definitely underline the word important and comic books, okay? And this is according to the woman. Possibly that might make a difference. Maybe there's a man in this conversation who's going to provide a different opinion about the importance of these books, okay? And that's something we don't really want to pay attention to answer this question. What we need to know is what the woman thinks about why these comic books are important. All right, so that's why I would underline woman and comic books important as the key word to this set of matching questions. Okay, now let's look at the different choices we have. A, debated serious topics of the day. B, widely accepted as valuable literature. Or C, led to the creation of other significant works. Okay, so what we have then down below in the answer choices are different comic books. All right. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and this is something that is true for almost all matching questions, is that you can choose A, B, or C more than once. Okay, so the answers to 1, 2, and 3, maybe B is the correct answer for 2 of them, or all 3, or maybe just 1. We don't know. You cannot just simply cross off an answer choice and expect it won't be used again. You can use the answer choices A, B, or C multiple times when the directions tell you that you may choose any letter more than once. Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind here. All right, now you're going to hear a passage, and we're going to listen for the different comic books mentioned and what the woman has to say about why they are important, okay? So listen for that as we hear the passage, and I'm going to play that now.
Personally, I was only ever interested in comics when I was a child. I haven't read them in years, and I still very much think of them as something made for children or for adults who simply don't want to grow up. Now, I'm willing to admit that might be prejudice on my part, and as I read your paper, I was looking for something to convince me I was wrong. But I'm afraid I just didn't find it.
But my paper specifically mentioned several famous American comic books with serious literary merit. Watchmen was named one of the greatest novels ever written, despite being a comic book, and Mouse won a Pulitzer Prize. Many people accept comics as a place where serious literary work can be done.
I think that's a fair point, but it's not a point you fully made in your paper. If that's the argument you'd like to make now, I have to call attention to the fact that you chose to focus your study on the superhero comics of the 1960s, which are far less literary in nature than the examples you just mentioned.
Well, I did focus on those, but the point was to lay a foundation for the literary study of comic books by focusing on early classics from the field. I argued that those comics of the 1960s are precursors to the more serious work that followed in later decades.
Okay, so some back and forth between the student and the male professor there. And so remember, what we care about in this question is what the woman thinks about these different works. Okay, so here are the places in green where we get the correct answers for our set of matching questions. Okay, so towards the beginning of the passage you heard, the comic books Watchmen and Mouse were mentioned right away at the beginning. And after she mentions those, she says this: many people accept comics as a place where serious literary work can be done. Okay, so she says there that many people accept. That's a paraphrase of the phrase from our answer choice B, where it says widely accepted. Okay, so many people accept that these are serious literary works. Okay, so B is your correct answer for these two comics, Watchmen and Mouse. All right? Then, after the male professor has something to say, she mentions, she sort of responds to his criticism of her discussion of the 1960s superhero comics by saying that, at the bottom in green, that they were precursors to more serious work that followed in later decades. Okay, so this one is testing your knowledge of the word precursor, because that idea paraphrases what we get in the answer choices. Let's just look at them. We've already said that 1 and 2 are B, and answer choice C is correct for the third one, because precursors means the same thing, or paraphrases the idea that these 1960s superhero comics led to the creation of other significant works. Okay, so these were precursors to those more serious literary works that the woman was talking about. Now, A might have been tempting, but the tricky word, the word that was put in there to sort of possibly cause problems, is the word serious there. There's no discussion by either speaker of how these comic books debated serious topics of the day. That would be like discussing controversial issues. All right. There's no discussion about why these books are important due to their coverage of difficult or debatable topics at all. What they're described as is being important literary works by the woman, and the male professors sort of trying to be convinced that that's true based on what the student is saying. Okay, so A doesn't work because it's not something mentioned, even though that word serious is discussed and thrown in there in the question here in the answer choice, and it's something that's mentioned in the passage, but they are talking about serious literary work, not serious debatable topics. Okay, so that's why A doesn't work, and B works for 1 and 2. C is the answer choice there for C. Okay, to review, for matching questions, what you have to do, you're supposed to match a numbered list of items to answer choices with letters. Okay, so that's the activity you're supposed to do. And often these are used to test detailed comprehension. You're supposed to listen for details, like we saw with the comic book names there. So Watchmen, Mouse, and the 60s superhero comics were details, and you had to listen for information about those different comic books. That's a good example of what you might face on for matching questions on the listening paper. Okay, so what you should try to do in the time you have to analyze and predict before you listen, you take a close look at the question, make sure you understand exactly what they're asking you to find, look at the different A, B, and C answer choices you might need to supply, but then pay close attention to your list of items. Those are the things you're going to need to track. As you listen to the speaker talking, those answers will come in order for the numbered list that you have down below. Okay, so, and last piece of advice, just watch out. As with other question types, especially multiple choice and matching is the same, speakers may change their mind about certain things. So you just need to keep an open mind and just be expecting that sometimes speakers will change course. Okay, so those are matching questions for the IELTS listening paper.